What's up, everyone? You are listening to Pop Punk Politics with Alter Ego here on 90.3 WAIH The Way at SUNY Potsdam. If you have a request, you can call us at 315-267-2511. You can also visit our website at waih.fm, like us on Facebook at facebook.com/90.3 WAIH, or tweet us at 90.3 WAIH with the word point spelled out. And a reminder that this show is during safe harbor hours and may contain strong language, so please use your own discretion, and that the views and opinions shared on this show do not affiliate with SUNY Potsdam or WAIH Radio. I am here with my special guest, Jake. Say hi, Jake.
Hello, everyone.
He is from the College Democrats, and we will talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But first, let's talk about you. Introduce yourself. Where are you from? What year are you? What's your major? All the freshman questions.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. No
problem.
My name's Jake Frostick. I'm a sophomore here at SUNY Potsdam, currently class of 2018. My major is political science, and I am also minoring in history, and my hometown is Plattsburgh, New York.
Great, awesome. So you're close by.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. And you said you're a politics major,
yes.
Political science major. What made you choose that major?
Well, I've always kind of had an interest in political science, mostly from an ideological standpoint. But then when I got here, I met some of the professors. I took some classes, and it kind of served as a clicking moment for me where it was this is something I'm really interested in and ultimately is passionate about. So I decided to, make it my major.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the College Democrats. From my understanding, they're a fairly new club on campus, which is really interesting for me personally because you would think a liberal arts campus would have a College Democrats club, but we only had College Republicans. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about your meeting times, how many members you have, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, we currently have about between 5 to 10 people, 5 people who regularly come, and then, other people who will come by into a couple of meetings, not always on a regular basis. We kind of formed out of the sense of we have PSA, which is, kind of like a bipartisan group on campus for everyone to discuss. We have college Republicans for, people who are, fit that conservative, kind of belief system. And, I think it's great for them because, this can be, I think this area is not as liberal as some might say it would be, as you would expect from a New York college. But, it's really great to have them together to for them to have discussions and feel like, they have a place to have share because, that's ultimately about discussion and dialogue, which is what we're mostly interested in too from the Democratic side. But yeah, we kind of formed as that result of we kind of want to get progressives together, get liberals together to kind of share our ideas, share our thoughts and opinions, and and ultimately promote progressive ideals through community outreach, through doing events. So we've been a club for about 2 years now.
Great.
And so far what we've done is we've managed to do a clothing drive where we raised $60 for the local WIC. We donated about 5 to 6 bags of clothes, and recently we hosted a March for Bernie, which had a turnout of 125 people.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were very proud of that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Especially for a club that has, between 5 and 8 members, to get that many people to show up. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're very dedicated.
Yeah, obviously. You also work pretty closely along with PSA and the College Republicans as well, I'm aware. What sort of events have you done in collaboration with them?
Currently, we've mostly worked on mostly just kind of alongside events that the politics department hosts. And we've also been hosting dialogues and discussions.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a great answer. That's awesome that you guys have come so far in such a short amount of time. So let's ask more of a personal question for you. What does it mean to be a Democrat? What sort of views do you need, or do you need a set idea of these views that you need to have to be a Democrat? Can you be a little varied?
Well, the idea that you're supposed to fit either a conservative or a liberal ideology to belong to a Republican Party or the Democratic Party is not something that's been going on since we've had these two parties. It's ultimately kind of come out through the last probably 30, 40 years or so where you've had that strict divide, and you kind of see that through like the policies of Ronald Reagan. You see a little bit of that Bill Clinton, and ultimately, like back in you might look at someone like Eisenhower, and you would say you look at his policies, and you say, oh well, he kind of had a like a liberal. Like he had some very liberal policies for someone who's Republican, and that's a lot, and that has a lot to do, of course, with like where it depended on where you were. So so down south you were conservative, but you were a registered Democrat because of obvious history with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's mostly come out of the last like I said 34 years or so, in my opinion. But today, what it kind of represents, at least for me, is that to be a Democrat, more specifically to be a progressive or a liberal, it means to be, in a sense, identify that there's going to be change in the world. I think, which sounds very vague, but
Yeah.
when it's about accepting that time evolves and that change is an inevitable possibility, and we have to like adapt to that change, and we have to kind of get used to new ideas. We have to like learn from what they are, learn how to deal with them. So what you have is the progressive model that people, it's our duty to make sure that everyone is able to reach their full potential and like exercise all the natural rights that they can. So, and what that comes down to is freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and the freedom, I think what's kind of taken, at least like with current issues, is like the freedom to express yourself. So ultimately it's about that, and then that kind of goes into the idea of like, well, where does that come into like economics? And I think, and the progressive or liberal model is that the government needs to put measures in to make sure that the system isn't being played in a way that only advantages some, not all. And there's some contention about whether Democrats haven't been able to do that, which I would I'll fully criticize them for that. That that's which is has come up with the election, certainly,
Right.
but that's what the model should be, at least if you want to be identify as a liberal or Democrat. And
Okay. Yeah. So you've been mentioning the kind of this difference between just like liberals and progressives. And
more of like liberals and progressives can kind of fall along the same lines,
right.
but that doesn't always translate into being a Democrat, just as much as being conservative doesn't translate into being a Republican. These are just kind of like these are just groups that have formed to kind of like form a consensus, not always a exact consensus, and sometimes not always consistent.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you think that causes some issues within the Democrat Party, whether you're progressive in the sense of, you actually want to help the poor out of poverty, and liberal being, or just American Democrats in general, being more, everyone should have an equal opportunity. Do you think that's caused any kind of tension between the party itself or within the party itself?
Within like the party, I guess that kind of depends on what you look at from the certainly within like the people who are in charge. So you have congressmen, senators, governors. I think they all kind of follow around the same like mantra, same like kind of ideology, but which is that's fine. But I think what's happened now, what we've seen with this with the election, and this kind of like now this progressive movement is really kind of building.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're kind of seeing, they're not really representing us the way we want them to. We don't, sometimes, they don't all, they can give in easily to like, the Republican stronghold, and they can, they ultimately follow economic policies that we wouldn't consider progressive. So it's kind of looking at from the ideas of like Keynesian economics, which was what we had from the New Deal from Roosevelt. And then you have the Hayek economic philosophy, which is from Reagan. And you can look at a lot of Democratic economic positions and say, or their voting records, and say, well, they kind of follow that like more like laissez-faire kind of capitalism and free market, where it's like, you have business growing, you have, our GDP is amazing right now. companies are promoting record profits, but you see income inequality. There are 45 million Americans that are below the poverty line. You have people struggling to feed themselves. You have troubles with housing. So the question is, are they doing that? Are they actually following what we think is the progressive model? It's not always, exact. In some ways they have done well. In other ways we think they need to improve.
Maybe you kind of already touched upon this, but I'm asking just out of general curiosity. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's just the establishment and them kind of, I don't want to say being bullied by the Republicans, but is it kind of just, them giving into these ideas that they don't necessarily stand for? Is it the establishment? Like, why do you think that?
Maybe not always not going in, but maybe they have this idea of like they've become, they get into this position of power and then they kind of become, what's the word, alienated from their constituents. So, we look at these statistics and say, oh, well, people are actually pretty positive about the idea of, free education or free healthcare. And no, when I say that, I do not mean just completely free. We will pay for it, I promise.
Yeah.
But, this idea that we're supposed to be, putting these safety measures to make sure that everyone's doing well. How can, when you look, because, we're, the country's doing well, our economy is doing solid, but there are still people being left behind.
Sure, yeah. I find it interesting you brought up the whole free education thing because I didn't know this until recently, but the government actually subsidizes about 30% of education right now, which could you imagine if they didn't? It would be so much more, it'd be 30% more expensive than it already is.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And then it comes into this idea of what's the best way to like, have an education. Is it homeschooling? Is it public school?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Is it charter schools, private schools? Which, that's a whole nother debate, which I can't go much into.
Yeah, that would be all, like, literally all night.
Yeah.
But no, I just find that interesting that you bring that up because, it is, a lot of people, I didn't know this, is that the government does already subsidize it and, a fair amount, and it's still super expensive.
And with that, we kind of look at the thing like the funding for colleges has not gone down, but we've noticed that the rates of tuitions have gone up. And they've kind of looked at that and say it was like, well, administrative pay has interestingly been skyrocketing since we've had education costs go way up.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we have time for one more question, and then we will take a short break. But again, you've kind of already touched upon this, but what don't you agree within the Democrat Party? Are there certain policies that you don't necessarily agree with? Are there certain issues that you wish were handled a little differently? What don't you like about the party?
I think they've, it kind of gets into what I've said again. I think in a lot of ways they have either given in to like, the Republican stronghold of, obviously Democrats can just as easily, keep to whatever their platform might be and say we're not going to allow any votes on this. But I think ultimately a lot of it's been kind of not going as far as what you would want the supposed progressive party to be. So we look at, think about like how you have in a negotiation. Generally, you would think you want to go to like the extremes so then you can find middle ground. And I would, and this is again just my opinion. I don't think they support. I think they put themselves in a position where they're not really asking for much. So Republicans don't see much need to bargain.
Yeah, I find that interesting that you bring that up because there's a lot of Republicans who may say that the Republican Party is kind of giving into the system and giving away of a lot of policies that they believe in and just kind of letting, in a way, the Democrats bully them. So you see it on both sides, which you would think that it would even itself out, but it really hasn't. And there's just so much conflict between both sides. It's really interesting that you bring that up. All right, we're going to take a short break, but before I do, want to let you know that the Burlington Taiko will be coming to SUNY Potsdam tomorrow. That is this Sunday. May 1st. Experience the powerful spellbinding sounds of taiko from a group with 25 years of experience at 7:30 p.m. in Hosmer Hall. If you've ever seen our taiko group here on campus, they are amazing. And I can only imagine how more amazing the Burlington taiko is with 25 years of experience. So definitely don't miss that. It's going to be tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. in Hosmer Hall. All right. Got some great music for you tonight. We're going to start off with Altered Sky, which is actually a band we have here at the station. But I also just really like them, so I thought I'd play them for you tonight. This is Altered Sky with Apple Tree. And as always, keep it locked here on The Way.
As we sat below the branch of the apple tree, closer than before, but not enough for us to be. Yeah, 'cause when the sun caught your eyes, it projected through that smile. I knew you'd given your heart away, but not to me this time. 'Cause it's over now, yeah, we're stuck together now, and my broken branches never reached to be clouded. My desire to keep you around now, she's no problem now. I never wanted this to end. Don't wait for me, hold me.
Dear Sophia, I think I'm better off without you. Like a photo of nature, like it's wish I never met you. Dear Sophia, I think I'm better off without you. I kinda miss you. Making out all night like we used to. We were good together. Now the things you've done we can't undo. So don't write me back, P.S. I hate you. We don't even need one last goodbye. I'll see you in 10 years. Or maybe we should make that 45. We've done it, it's over. And now the fairy tale is up in flames. I hope it was worth it. Yeah, I hope it was worth it. And if there's one thing in this life I know is true, it's that I wish I never met you. Dear Sophia, I think I'm better off without you. I kinda miss you. Making out all night like we used to. We were good together. Now the things you've done we can't undo. So don't write me back, P.S. I hate you. I hope one day you fall in love with someone new. And just when you think it's true, he breaks your heart in two. Just like you did to me. Just like you did to me. Dear Sophia, I think I'm better off without you. I kinda miss you. Making out all night like we used to. We were good together. Now the things you've done we can't undo. So don't write me back, P.S. I hate you. P.S. I hate you. Dear Sophia, don't write me back, P.S. I hate you. Dear Sophia, P.S. I hate you. Dear Sophia, don't write me back, P.S. I hate you.
I'll never get to know my friend Steven. He thought he found an answer. He was my friend since kindergarten. And then I watched him disappear. I'll never get to know my friend Melissa. She had a baby when she was 16. Now she works in a mall in Florida. Sometimes I wonder who she could have been. I'll never get to know my mom's friend Bonnie. She's the one who made me want to be an artist. She could paint the prettiest pictures until both her lungs collapsed. I'll never get to know my mom's friend Harry. He had a low, scratchy growl of a voice. He'd sing, "Make me an angel who flies from Montgomery." And then he drank himself to death. I'll never get to know my sister, because my sister is a crackhead. But thank God I remember when she was just a little kid. I'll never get to know my dad, cause my dad lives in a dream. And even though I think he's the best, he seems so far from everything. And I'll never get to know my mom, cause my mom is an alcoholic. And I bet when she was young, she never saw it coming. So you might wonder why I'm an asshole, or wonder why I'm so uptight, or wonder why I don't just chill out and learn how to have a good time. Well, sometimes I'm scared right out of my mind, and sometimes I just get angry because I've been let down by the people that I love, but I will not let down the people who love me.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos of memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. Something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.
YPH by 7 Seconds. Before that was Good Riddance, Time of Your Life by Green Day. Before that was Never Get to Know by Paul Baludo. I don't know how to say his name. Before that was P.S. I Hate You by Simple Plan. And before that was Apple Tree by Altered Sky. In case you forgot, you're listening to Alter Ego Pop Punk Politics here on 90.3 WAIH The Way at SUNY Potsdam. If you have a request, you can call us at 315-267-2511. You can also visit our website at waih.fm. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/90.3 WAIH or tweet us at 90.3 WAIH with the word point spelled out. And a reminder that the show is during safe harbor hours and may contain strong language, so please use your own discretion, and that the views and opinions shared on this show do not affiliate with SUNY Potsdam or WAIH Radio. I'm here with Jake.
Still here.
Yeah, he's been great so far. We've been talking about all sorts of Democrat stuff, so we're going to continue on that. So the next question I have for you is kind of a heavy-weighted question here. So,
Fire away.
all right, what do you think is the biggest issue facing our country today?
I think the biggest issue facing our country today is money in politics. And what that entails.
Yes, do go on.
Yeah. Well, we look at the finance system. We look at who are the people who are sponsoring the people who are representing us.
Mm-hmm.
So my representative and the representative of much of the North Country is Elise Stefanik.
Mm-hmm.
Elise Stefanik is a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And, she ran, and one of the things there are several things obviously ideologically I take several issues with her. But I think, overall she's doing okay at her job. But there's times I look at the way she votes and the way I've seen I've looked, and I would recommend for anyone votesmart.org, which actually lists policies for candidates or for people in politics. They list who they're funded by. It's it's a really great website to get more informed. But Elise Stefanik, one of the things she talked about was running on the idea that we have to protect our environment because we live in the North Country. It's this beautiful place upstate,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to protect it. And then she voted for the Keystone Pipeline.
Ah, okay, yeah.
And obviously, the Republican Party has not embraced environmentalism
Mm-hmm.
overall. But I think when you say that and then you
kind of go a different direction.
yeah.
And,
Interesting fact, Elise Stefanik has received funding from the Koch brothers,
Mm-hmm.
which is, certainly for us liberals, it's a dirty dirty names, there's reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
They keep propping up, they own an oil corporation. They're vastly wealthy men
Mm-hmm.
with very libertarian views, and they use their influence and through their money
right.
to fund candidates to get them elected, and
Mm-hmm.
then hopefully they'll
Mm-hmm.
vote in ways that they feel they would. And this is not something exclusively to Republicans. We obviously want to get into it with when it comes to big oil or certain corporations, but ultimately this is not a partisan issue. This is something that's happening on both sides. What we want our constituents, we want our representatives, our lawmakers to be representing us. They should be beholden to us. Elise Stefanik should not be beholden to the people who fund her. She should just be beholden to the people who voted for her.
Right.
And in ways, I think she's upheld that, which is easy. We're a relatively conservative area,
Mm-hmm.
but you ask yourself, is it really okay for to receive potentially hundreds of thousands and potentially millions of dollars in donations for you to run a campaign, and then say, well, can you still vote for what your constituents want or what your party
Mm-hmm.
wants? I think that's a real it's a real gray area.
Sure, yeah. That actually reminds me of, I don't know if you watch Family Guy, but there's a Family Guy episode where Lois runs for mayor, I think it is, and, she says, we're going to clean up the lake, we're going to do all this, and then she wants this coat or whatever, so she uses taxpayer money to buy this coat, and then eventually she gets corrupt by these people who want to dump in the lake that she just cleaned up.
Yeah.
With taxpayer money, and then they do it, and then she realizes, I'm such an awful person. Why did I do that? I ran on this, the whole reason she wanted to run was to clean up the lake.
Yeah.
And it just turned into money in politics, like you were saying.
Yeah, and ironic Family Guy actually showing small scale the ideas of of the corruption and like the idea of crony capitalism. And yeah, I think so ultimately I do think that's ultimately the number one problem within our our political system is just this idea that like money is power. It's not,
It really is.
yeah, it's, and it's hard to avoid those things, but it's gotten to a point where it's like, are we really, you got to ask yourself, are we voting for what's best? And it's like, so you look at like environmentalism, and you say we take Hillary Clinton, who says, she's running on, she's an environmentalist, she wants to, protect the environment because, we've seen through evidence and through scientific analysts for over 50 years that climate change is real, carbon emissions are heating the planet. And, we're getting to a point where we have to be prepared for like the changes that are going to come to that. And we've already seen those. But then she says, I'm okay with local fracking, which if you're an environmentalist and you care about the environment, that should be immediate turnoff for you.
Right.
Because fracking is, literally injecting chemicals into the ground to extract natural resources. And, it can result in like the poisoning of landscape. It's just like a completely awful thing. And it should not be okay in any forms, whether it's a corporation doing it or if it's a local municipality doing it. We have to, which, we have to switch to, renewable sources of energy. So, to be, and, you also look at the fact that, she has a lot of funding from, big oil lobbyists.
Right.
And it's hard to say, how can you be, and you got to ask yourself, are you really going to be an environmentalist if, you're taking money from these people? And it likely that's going to influence you, because if you don't, then they're going to get really upset.
Right. Yeah.
And, they're going to fund someone else the next time around. Whereas, for the Republicans, it's like, oh, well, climate change isn't real. So they don't even have to worry about it. But, and, that, of course, gets into some of my, criticisms. But, yeah. So, and, you look at it, too, when, like, just, this influence of money for, like, any, like, type of voting mechanism, or even, like, Citizens United, that, allows, has allowed corporations to have more influence. Even this idea that through Supreme Court rulings, now this idea that that corporations are people, which just sounds, which it should sound absurd, like in any concept that shouldn't have to be discussed. But we, people want influence, and people with money will be able to get what they want in the end.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that covers it pretty well. I actually didn't expect that answer, but I really, really love that answer.
Yeah.
So good on you. So let's talk a little bit. Actually, I'm going to save it for a little bit later. I'm going to actually ask you more of a historical question that kind of relates to kind of the criticisms along with the Democratic Party. So prior to 1913, there was no income tax.
Yeah.
It was in the Constitution, no income tax. The government got funding through different tariffs and other forms of money. Yet there were still, there were still colleges, there were still schools, there were still roads. It was still a very productive time. And then after 1913, the income tax was put into place. And actually, not to say that there wasn't any income tax beforehand, because during times of war, they would put this income tax in to support the war, and then after they would get rid of it.
Yeah.
And then after 1913, they put back in this income tax. So do you think an income tax is needed, and why? Simply because in this time beforehand, it wasn't needed.
I think when it comes to taxing, it's really about like, what is that money going towards? And so we say things as like, we want proper roads, we want safe roads. We should tax for that, you would think, because that's a public good. Right. You want your schools funded. You want to be able to contribute to defense spending, or maybe you want to contribute to like, federal agencies that, do amazing work. You will, I think, where it comes to this idea that like, so, obviously no one's ever going to want to pay taxes.
Sure. Yeah.
It's just, but we kind of got to accept that it's like that, it's that necessary burden. And where I come into like, the idea of taxing, I think when you look at like, we have to look at it from like each taxing bracket. So so we kind of get into the idea. It's like you know, you have some people arguing we need a flat tax because that's fair. Everyone's getting taxed the same rate.
Right.
You know, and obviously, a person who's making 40,000 a year will technically pay less than, say, someone who's making 2 million a year. But
Right.
yeah, but then like consider like what that means. So like say like 40,000, say like you make 40,000 a year and you get taxed like say 10%. So
Right.
that's $10,000 out of you know your income. Whereas 10% from 2 million. I'm not a math person, for the record.
No, that's
but
fine.
I think we see what we're getting at.
Yeah,
this
it's
idea
still
that
more, but it's not in comparison to how much you're actually taking out.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
no, I get that.
Yeah. And obviously we don't really have a tax rate. Obviously, people who make more do have a bit of a higher tax rate than people who fall into lower brackets. But then you get into this point of like some people take their money and they store it overseas in places where it cannot be taxed.
Right.
That's
I mean, technically, you do if you have an offshore bank account. You do need to report it to the
yes,
IRS.
yeah.
So that's kind of like, but some people don't. And I feel like you could, if I had, maybe I shouldn't say this, but if I had an offshore bank account, what would really make me want to report that to the IRS when chances are they're probably not going to find me?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and just this whole idea of tax havens and not like we have this idea that like I think we have this idea that the people who are the most successful are the people, you know, who are making the most money. But you know, you kind of look at it as like are you know, you ask yourself how much like did they really earn their wealth? And you know, I'm not knocking on anyone. I'm not knocking on like Bill Gates or, you know, any other billionaires of the world.
I don't think you are either.
No, no. But what I'm saying is it's like you get to a point where it's like, you know, your money is now just sitting there. It's not doing anything. It's not entering the economy. Capitalism is not like the ability for the company or the corporation to make a profit. It's the idea that it's built around the middle class. The middle class needs to be able to buy these consumer goods that these corporations are making, thus contributing to the profits. And, you know, it's this cycle of you know, buying these consumer goods.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So and then you get into the side, and then, you know, so then you say it was like, well, people can't really afford these, you know, so you're making these amazing products, but then, you know, how many of these people can actually afford these things?
Or, you know, I was watching a documentary kind of about this, like we need to start improving the lives of the middleman, kind
Yeah.
of the working class.
Yeah.
And, you know, one thing that was brought up was there's only so many Ferraris you can buy in this
Yeah.
world. So even if you are making this huge amount of money, you know, you're probably going to buy at the most 3 Ferraris, you know, and if that money is distributed a little better, then more people can buy more Ferraris, I guess,
Yeah.
and that would contribute more to the economy.
Yeah. And then if you get into this idea of like corporate welfare of, you know, and we had this with the housing recession where you know, these companies were bailed out after, you know, what ultimately was them causing, you know, a giant financial recession. You know, they were bailed out and they've been given corporate subsidies because apparently, you know, they need these to survive, or we have this idea of the too big to fail bank. But, you know, you ask yourself, well, capitalism kind of has this idea of like of Darwinism, that, you know, it's the survival of the fittest. So why are we propping up companies that cannot, you know, survive without corporate subsidies? Why aren't we guaranteeing people to have health care so they don't get sick and then they're not missing work? So then so then it's a cycle of they make the money and then they can buy products, which helps the corporations, and it becomes that cycle again. So, you know, and the only time I would consider, you know, corporate welfare or corporate subsidies to be okay, certainly for farming. That's, you know, we absolutely need farming subsidies, so farmers can turn a profit, so they can, you know, keep, you know, their livelihoods going. But you ask yourself, does the company like Walmart really need to, you know, when they're always hitting record profits, all these other corporations are hitting record profits. They're continuing to be more and more successful, but they pay little in taxes, and, you know, ultimately they're being given money that comes from our taxes.
And they also just pay their employees less.
And they pay their employees less.
Yeah.
How are you going to be able to contribute to capitalist society, if you can, if you're living, if your wages, your wages of 725 are going, it has to go to paying for housing, paying for food, paying for if you have family, supporting your children.
Yeah, absolutely. So we only have a short amount of time left, but I did want to get to this, so I'm going to ask you one last question.
Yeah.
What do you think of the primaries right now? Who do you think is going to win? Who do you like? And you can talk about either the Republican or Democrat side. I
Yep.
would prefer Democrat, but it's totally up to you. What are your takes on the primary?
It's been crazy. Well, I'm going to start this with a full disclaimer. I was born in Burlington, and
Okay. Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time in Vermont growing up. So I am a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Fair
and,
enough. I'll take that.
Yeah, and the College Democrats, we as a club decided to support and endorse Senator Sanders.
Great.
Yeah, because ultimately, and that kind of gets this idea that we feel that Senator Sanders represents what we want the Democratic Party to be. So progressive on all issues, not just social issues. Transparent, able to, hold their ground. And, we get into, people say it's like, oh, well, there's this worry he's going to be too and hold his idea. I mean, his nickname on the Senate floor was the Amendment King, because what he did was he would go out when bills came up, find the people who could best work with, regardless of party affiliation, and get legislation through. And I think we really need that within the Democratic Party if we want to really represent like the liberal progressive values that we've been told that that's what the Democratic Party is.
Right.
And ultimately, I don't feel like Hillary really represents that.
Neither do I. We talked about that last week a little bit, and just how corrupt she can be in
Yeah.
certain, and you even touched upon it a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. I think that covers pretty much everything I wanted to get to. I want to thank you again for being on my show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, of course, anytime. I really appreciate it. I know it's late and on a Saturday, but again, I just really appreciate you coming out and talking with me about a subject that I fully believe we should have more discussion about. I like to have a lasting message on my show at the end of every politics show here. And my message is basically, there used to be a time where we could talk and have these discussions about politics regardless of our ideologies and our beliefs. And, I wouldn't think that you're a bad person because of it.
Yeah.
And you don't see that anymore. You don't see it on a personal level. You don't see it in the government. You don't see it anywhere. We're not working together to make this country, a great place. And I feel like we need to have more of these discussions and be a little more open-minded to opposite opinions.
Yeah. Yeah. Our ultimate goal within the College Democrats is to have discussions and to have like real productive dialogue so that we can, learn and actually find solutions to our problems. And that's why we've worked with PSA and where we've worked with college Republicans in many of our ventures, and we continue to do that. And I want to thank you for having me.
No problem.
And if anyone is interested in College Democrats, we meet Thursdays at 6 and Saturday 1:16. With the change of, with the year coming to the end, there might be a change to that, but I'm going to try and keep that at the same times.
Great.
So,
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Just to let all you SUNY Potsdam students know that you can meet with a peer career advisor to discuss your resume. There will be a table in the library every Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Bring a hard copy of your resume for immediate feedback. This will be at the Crum Library every Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Also remember that next week, Alter Ego will be back Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all at 10 p.m. Thursday with late night, Friday with movie night, and Saturday with Pop Punk Politics. So be sure to tune in for that. Thanks again for Jake for being with me. All right, we got one more song before we head out, and that will be All Time Low, Lost in Stereo, but the Cobra Starship Suarez remix. That was a real tongue twister right there. I'm surprised I didn't screw that up. All right, and as always, keep it locked here on The Way.